The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
Hello and welcome back to the Cosmic Library, where you can read the greatest stories in all of the multiverse. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
We are doing this show in conjunction with Second Union. For more of the latest headlines and entertainment, please go to our website at wearesecondunion.com. And, if I thought things were bad last week, it's gotten weirder this week in this country, I swear.
It's the end of the world as we know it.
It's not the end. I've
I know.
seen things go through seismic shifts, and there will be a recovery. Will it be clean, quick? No, I do not believe so. But it's going to take a good while before things get back to any semblance of normal.
And it's going to take people actually listening and abiding by CDC guidelines for it to actually work.
Well, it's that, and also the idea that people have to get over this notion that things will go back to the way they were. It's like when the housing bubble burst back in 2007, 2008. Our economy recovered, but it shifted. It went from the end of the manufacturing era into the beginning of the service era of the U.S. economy. Services were what everyone was providing. Services was the primary thing driving our economy, what we could actually provide for other people. And under the circumstances, the service industry has exploded. It is blown up. Somebody set C4 to it, and it was detonated. And now I'm curious to see what the next phase of the U.S. economy is going to be. I told my wife, without any sort of comedy or or notion of being funny, that if I had money to invest right now, I would invest it in food production, medical production, and Disney. Mm-hmm. And I know that last one sounds like a joke, except because of the properties Disney owns right now, Pixar, Star Wars, and Marvel, I think that once things get back to some area where people are going to seek entertainment, they're going to seek out those Marvel films. I think they're going to ransack the Disney theme parks in the nicest possible way, I mean. And I think they're just going to spend incredible amounts of money on the mouse.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention all the people that are signing up for Disney Plus now that they're quarantined and have nothing else to watch. And they have, most of the kids...
Right, and that's not to say that Six Flags and Warner Brothers and Cedar Point don't have other things to offer, but there's very few companies that have positioned themselves really globally as Disney has.
They are the empire, remember?
No, they're the resistance. I think they've managed to free us from MGM and Harvey Weinstein.
No, I still think they're the empire. They have the Infinity Gauntlet and they're collecting all the gems.
See, what you think about Disney is what I think about Starbucks.
Oh, they're part of the empire, too.
I see Starbucks as an evil empire. They are just freaking me out. But the news actually... The subject of this week is the first 6 issues of Excalibur, the 2019 version that came out post-Dawn of X in Marvel Comics. We will get to that after the news of the week. But before we get into Marvel comic news, I have to address the 800-pound gorilla in the room that has just beaten the hell out of me. Do you know who Diamond Comics Distributors?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've seen those headlines.
Yeah, Diamond Comics Distributors, they position themselves as the sole distribution company of comics globally. Even if you get an independent, odds are it passed through a Diamond warehouse to get to wherever it needed to get to be sold to you. Just yesterday, Diamond Comics has announced that they're going to send out the current shipment. They're going to empty their warehouses, and after that, they are not accepting any new shipments of comic books for distribution.
Oh, wow.
Because of the COVID-19 issues, Diamond has effectively put the brakes on their business, which puts the brakes on the comic industry. And I get the concern. I mean, they're not exactly what you would call an essential service. They are an entertainment service. But at the same time, this is one of the few hobbies I could do without interacting with a majority of human beings, and now it's gone. I spent a while discussing this with a couple other people, including the head of Second Union, who was really concerned that somehow we would stop doing this show because there's no new comics coming out. And I told him, there's plenty of things out there to read. There's like 4 lifetimes worth of comic books. But this does put a cramp in what I was planning to do on my Wednesday evenings while I can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm not scared. I'm just a little cheesed. And there's other good reasons beyond just entertaining me, or beyond entertaining me, for them to shut down. Simply because it did occur to me during this period where some states are in the middle of, not harsh, but reasonable measures to stop the spread of the coronavirus, whereas others aren't. That means that there are certain states where people just couldn't get comics and others where they could. There's probably going to be like eBay markups and markdowns. There was going to be some stores who couldn't sell while others could. It was going to be a very uneven market.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those easy ways to level the playing field for everybody while risking as few people as possible. I get it. I'm sad, but I get it. The head of Diamond Distributors, a man known as Steve Geppi, he put out a very long statement explaining why they were doing what they were doing. And part of it reads, quote, "Our publishing partners are also faced with numerous issues in their supply chain. Working with creators, printers, and increasing uncertainty when it comes to the production and delivery of products for us to distribute. Our freight networks are feeling the strain and are already experiencing delays, while our distribution centers in New York, California, and Pennsylvania were all closed late last week. Our own home office in Maryland instituted a work-from-home policy, and experts say that we can expect further closures. Therefore, my only logical conclusion is to cease the distribution of newly weekly product until there is greater clarity on the progress made towards stemming the spread of the disease." Unquote. I can't argue with that. You know, if business is already hard for them to do, there's only going to be just more and more delays, and the comic book market is just going to freak out more and more. As a result of Diamond Distribution shutting down, IDW suspended all of their May comic book releases. They're not putting out anything next month. Or no, in May, sorry. Although in this case, this means there won't be anything for April either. The only question I have, though, is if Diamond Distributors is not functioning and they're closing their warehouses, what happens if the comic books are already printed and are on their way to those warehouses?
Goodness.
Because goodness, I mean, I'm running under the assumption that things just don't arrive, you know, Monday night and then are immediately rifled out to the different places they have to go in their region.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have questions, but I don't think there's going to be any quick answers. So, yes, as I've discussed with the head of Second Union, we will continue to be here. We will continue because news does not stop, thankfully. The internet is a great source of news. And at the same time, there is still a ton of stories out there that we could review, as well as one I'm going to suggest at the end of the show that I think will be good by both of you. But we will get to all of that after the news of the week, and we will start with Marvel comic news. We will talk about the characters and properties owned by the House of Mouse and what plans they have coming in the upcoming months. And there are certain living objects returning to Marvel Comics publishing that are about to throw a monkey wrench into the entire universe.
Oh, again?
Yes, except not again. There's going to be a new storyline coming out this summer, as long as supply chains restart, called the Infinite Destinies event. With a name like that, one guess as to what objects I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Except it's not the objects we remember, because as a result of the Infinity storyline, the one that saw Gamora behead Thanos, the Infinity Gems are sentient. See, this was part of the final plan of whomever was at the end of the event, and I'm sorry, I don't remember whom it was. I think it was Adam Warlock, actually. To stop the Infinity Gems from being joined by any other person who just kind of comes along and has a radical idea for the universe, he used the Infinity Gauntlet to give the gems their own sentience. They can make their own decisions as to whom they bond with. And to Adam Warlock's surprise, not one gem decided to stay with him. They all went in all different directions. And right now, only 3 of those gems have shown up in different places. There is someone known as Quantum, who apparently is an enforcer to a mob agent. There is a young man, I forget whom, but he's bonded to the Time Gem. And then, of course, there is the quasi-supervillain running around in Marvel Comics, Star, who has the Reality Gem. And several comics and characters are going to be involved in this event. In June, Quantum will be in the Iron Man Annual #1. The one with a time gem, Overtime, will be in Captain America Annual #1.
Of course.
In July, Thor Annual #1 guest stars the Spirit of Corruption, which currently inhabits Danny Ketch. Black Cat Annual #2. I don't know why, but it appears the Black Cat is going to get into an argument with the White Fox.
Okay.
Because opposites?
Yeah, the White Fox is actually a governmental superhero for Korea. And I forget exactly what her abilities are, but the two of them are very similar. Claws, animal-themed totems, like to fight a lot, a little bit catty. The White Fox has a special ability, but forgive me, I forget what that is. They will not say what's going on in Avengers Annual #1. However, Miles Morales, Spider-Man Annual #1 in August, is guest starring someone named Amulet, who I believe is in... I think that's a guest star in Miss Marvel's book currently. And in September, rounding it out, is the Guardians of the Galaxy Annual #1, guest starring someone known as the Prince of Power, and Amazing Spider-Man Annual #2, who is guest starring Star. The reality gem embodiment, I guess would be the right word at this point. It's getting deep. As a matter of fact, another tie-in was announced called Infinite Destinies Super Spy vs. Super Spy, which sounds like a Mad Magazine skit, I swear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except nobody's going to be laughing by the time this is done, because they mean quite literally Super Spy versus Super Spy. Nick Fury Jr., the Black Nick Fury, versus Philip Cheese Coulson.
Really?
Yeah, they're going head to head. The two are up against each other. I don't know what Nick Fury's current status is since S.H.I.E.L.D. was destroyed and disbanded in Marvel Comics. However, last I checked on Phil Coulson, he's the one running the governmental version of the Squadron Supreme. So I don't know if this means that the two of them are going to meet one-on-one, or if Nick Fury's going to need his own team of people to go up against the Squadron.
Interesting.
I can tell you that was recently revealed that, remember Phil Coulson died as a result of the Secret Empire?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was resurrected by Mephisto.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sure that came with strings.
Oh, yeah.
However, another character is getting their own miniseries for another shot at the big time. Miss America, America Chavez, is getting a new limited series courtesy of Kalinda Vasquez and Carlos Gomez. It's scheduled to launch this June. The miniseries is called America Chavez, Made in the USA. It is a 5-part limited series that's going to center around a story we haven't really heard much of about America Chavez. Her origin. It's the origin of both her and her abilities.
Oh, cool.
That's quite surprising, actually.
It is rather weird to have a character that's basically been running around for, 5-6 years now, and we still don't know where she came from.
Yeah.
Especially since she has a well-rounded group of abilities: flight, invulnerability, super strength, limited super speed, and the ability to punch through dimensions.
That's a
Which
new
I
one.
think is the coolest thing.
No, that's not a new one, Jesse. That is how her powers work. Remember those star-shaped portals she formed in the West Coast Avengers?
Well, no, I know that. I was saying, though, outside of punching portals and dimensions, she's got basically powers of a paragon hero, aka Superman.
Yeah, she always has, but it's the star-shaped portals that really shown her as different. I don't recall why exactly she punched into this dimension, but she came from somewhere else. She's not from the 616. And for those who may be listening and don't know, the 616 is the designation for the normal Marvel universe in their multiverse, the 616th discovered plane of existence.
Would you think they'd be like lower in numbers? I think
Maybe, but rather than DC's version of things, DC, I think Earth 1 is their name for DC's Prime Universe. There's something self-serving and a little bit egotistical about that. When Marvel's universe is designated 616, that makes it sound like one in a number of different places, and I like that feeling.
Yeah, instead of Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3 in the DC.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like this particular version of Marvel is the place we've chosen to focus on rather than being the most important point in their multiverse.
So that's the comparison between Marvel and DC. DC thinks that they're the center of the multiverse, and Marvel's aware that they're not.
I'll leave that to you. It's just how I interpret things anyway.
Well, at least Marvel doesn't go into the negatives.
That is a different conversation, and I'm not comfortable having it.
That's a conversation for another day. Let's put a little pin in that.
No, unfortunately, it's going to be an upcoming conversation if schedules hold true for the summer, because that's when the Dark Knight's Death Metal event comes out, and that's exactly the event where this stuff is spun out of. The negative numbers. He's absolutely correct. That is a recent development that I'm still not happy with. But in the meantime, Marvel is putting out a comic book based on Disney theme parks.
What?
Well, this summer in California Adventure out in Anaheim, Disney has scheduled the opening of their Avengers Campus, if you recall, which includes several Marvel Cinematic themed experiences, food joints, and one or two rides, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, scheduled for June in 2020 is the Web of Spider-Man series, capital W, capital E, capital B, which is supposed to be a 5-issue miniseries setting the stage for a Disneyland augmented reality ride that involves Spider-Man. If I remember correctly, well, I don't know. These cross-promotional things can either come off as really well thought out or just ham-fisted. I don't find a lot of in-between in them. However, this is supposed to be setting the stage for the Worldwide Engineering Brigade, or WEB, attraction as part of California Adventure. I've been hearing things on and off, but I still haven't seen an actual video. Evidently, what you're supposed to do is sit in a pod in this ride, which goes on a trackless ride and is following Spider-Man through a location. But because of some AR glasses you throw on, and because of a camera that can follow up to 60,000 gestures per second, it's going to follow you around, and because of the AR goggles, when you move your hands in such a way, it's going to look like you're literally throwing webs out into the environment.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm guessing the comic book ties into that somehow.
Okay, I'm in. Let's do this.
Being done by writer Kevin Schnick and artist Roberto De Salvo. It's a story about Spider-Man's new Tony Stark-funded research station and everything the young recruits for Spidey's Worldwide Engineering Brigade get up to. I don't know what else to say about it, because I'm sure they're going to keep secrets until, at the very least, California Adventure opens this section of the park. And it just makes me more curious to actually go and experience this whole thing. Between that and the web-swinging robot they've introduced, I'm so curious. I take it you guys know about that.
No.
Mm-mm.
There's an actual animatronic that is set up on a sort of pulley system that once they launch and it detaches from the main cable, it will go into some pre-programmed poses. So it actually looks like Spider-Man is arcing up over buildings and behind them in the theme park. This is a literal thing that's happening, and I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know if it's like the clocks on It's a Small World. It'll happen every 15 minutes or how they time it out. But something tells me once they open it, I'm not going to do anything for a little while. I'm just going to find a good central point to sit and look. But I don't need the giant pretzels. They're supposed to be like Pym particle infused pretzels. That's why they're huge. Meanwhile, an era in Marvel Comics is coming to an end. Ta-Nehisi Coates, Daniel Acuna, and Brian Stelfreeze will end their run on the Black Panther with issue number 40 scheduled this June. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's issue number 25, which will be a 40-page special this June. T'Challa's story will come full circle in that one. He will have gone intergalactic, he will have been a slave, a liberator, a rebellion leader, and a king of Wakanda again. There is no indication as to what new creative team is being brought on board, but this may finally bring an end to the Intergalactic Empire of Wakanda event. I may have to back up and read some of that. Ta-Nehisi Coates, there's times he's awesome, there's times he can be a bit befuddling to me, but it's always good to double check. Meanwhile, Carnage has a new host.
Who?
As of Venom number 24, the Carnage symbiote has found a new person to inhabit, and this means trouble for everybody.
Doesn't it always, though?
This one's name is Eddie Brock.
Oh.
The symbiote has completely taken over his nervous system and started to override his personality. The symbiote is still awaiting the arrival of Null in Marvel Comics, the god of symbiotes. So, I can't imagine he'll be a willing host, or he'll probably be fighting from within, but the Carnage symbiote's never been as strong as it has been right now. I also wonder what this will mean for Eddie's son Dylan, who lately seems to have as much control over symbiotes as Null does. I sense a tug of war.
Yeah, a lot.
Now, further on in Marvel Comics, we have read the entirety of the Dawn of X, the House of X and Powers of 10 miniseries, right? 12 issues.
Mm-hmm.
How easy would you say that is to summarize?
I
agree with both of you. There is a lot happening in there that is easily an hour-long conversation, assuming you're not interrupted. However,
we'll go off on tangents, which we do.
Yeah. However, Marvel Comics appears to have done the impossible. Writer Jess Harold and various artists have gotten together to do X-Men Dawn of X Saga #1. Supposedly, this is one issue that sums up the entire Dawn of X miniseries group.
How the heck?
I don't know. I really don't know. It is titled as a one-shot, not part of a series, a one-shot. The synopsis reads, quote, "Catch up on the revolutionary new era for the X-Men. Jonathan Hickman transformed everything in the pages of House of X and Powers of 10, bringing all of mutant kind together on the island nation of Krakoa. Witness the many lives of Moira MacTaggert that paved the way for the Dawn of X, and experience Charles Xavier's world-altering announcement. As the X-Men ally with former foes to act as ambassadors for this brave new nation, strange and different mutant teams come together. Captain Kate Pryde leads the seafaring Marauders, rescuing mutants and protecting Krakoa's interests. Betsy Braddock, the new Captain Britain, assembles her own Excalibur. Quanon, now known as Psylocke, leads the fallen angels into battle. The new mutants head deep into space to find an old friend. And X-Force, the mutant CIA, does whatever it takes to keep Krakoa safe," unquote.
What issue?
That's what it says. I would love to know what the page count is for this.
Seriously, that was going to be my next question. How long is it?
32 pages. That doesn't seem physically possible.
No.
Maybe this one-shot is made out of Pym particles. This doesn't seem right.
Have to be.
I mean, I can't even say I need this. I bought the hardcover of the Dawn of X very proudly. I paid the $60 to get myself one because, goodness knows, I'm not going to crack open the issues I bought. However, with that said, I don't see how this is possible. I have to pick this up and flip through it just to find out how they did this. Last up in Marvel comic news, writer Rick Remender. I think he's rather good at what he does. He's done a number of different series for Marvel and DC. He actually had a pitch for a series called Hearts of Darkness that Marvel declined. And Hearts of Darkness is kind of a funny name only because it, what's the right way to put it? It's been used for several of the more macabre characters and storylines in Marvel Comics. Mm-hmm. And his pitch, or at least the part of a photo he posted on Twitter, was a 3-issue miniseries. In the overview, it reads, quote, "In an alternative reality where the supernatural has taken hold over everything, Doctor Strange and his wife Clea rule the universe with Brother Voodoo at their side. The Avengers are comprised of members of the Legion of Monsters and supernatural versions of Thor, Iron Man, and Hawkeye. Son of Satan is President of the United States. Ghost Rider is Captain America, leader of the Avengers. And when we open our story, Ghost Rider has been killed. Cut to deep in the jungle of South America, Frank Castle, the stitched-up monstrosity known as Frankencastle, hides away from civilization with a tribe of primals, undiscovered Mayans living in a secret temple dug deep into the side of a mountain. Here, the spirit of vengeance finds and possesses a perfect new host, Frankencastle. Inside his mind, with an insatiable thirst for retribution, without a normal human psyche to restrain it, the spirit is infinitely powerful. Frank becomes a dark god living atop an ancient Mayan temple on a throne of skulls where he's worshipped by locals. All regress to primal states. If left unchecked in this new, all-powerful spirit of vengeance will soon spread and scorch all sinners. And all men are sinners." Unquote. I'm intrigued by this idea.
I'll be honest, I never thought I would hear the name Freaking Castle
Well, not
ever
again.
again.
Yeah, I know. I thought that would be done. There's a little snippet of the plot here, but part of it involves a vampire down in the jungles of South America trying to find drug cartel compounds, and he finds them all decimated. This this vampire is named James Howlett. Jesse, who is James Howlett?
I know who James Howlett is.
I'm telling you to say who
Feels like
James Howlett is.
It's Wolverine.
Yeah. Wolverine also will encounter a new Captain America, a werewolf, a brand new Capwolf. Hey, Capwolf is that is just an infamous part of Marvel history at this point.
No, and it's something I'm trying to forget.
I am out. I am out of this project.
I'm intrigued by this idea. I love alt-world stuff.
I like alt-world stuff too, but this is all the fantasy crap I not find any joy in.
See, I like some fantasy stuff, but Werewolf Cap is just
Hey, blame the 80s.
I blame the 80s for so much.
I would have read that.
I was there.
I would have read that.
Forged.
I would have read that with a big smile on my face. But again, it was a rejected plot, so it's not happening.
Okay, well.
Next up, we have DC comic news. This is where we talk about the other major company in comics and the storylines and characters they have coming now and in the near future. Batman number 93 looks like it's going to be a huge game changer. We are in the middle of this weird story with the designer who supposedly has designed the perfect crime for Gotham City. When he first proposed this a long time ago, Catwoman, Two-Face, the Penguin, and Joker were supposed to be part of this plot. And everything seemed to be going fine until the designer had a long conversation with the Joker and freaked. And I mean just completely freaked. Apparently he saw something of the madness building in Joker way back when. And when I say back when, this was back during the period where Catwoman was wearing a full purple bodysuit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this was quite a while ago. Flash forward to today. The designer is trying to enact some kind of new plan and drive Batman up a wall. Meanwhile, Batman has allied himself with several interesting individuals to try and keep things at bay, including Nightwing and Batgirl and Harley Quinn even.
Okay.
So the Joker has interceded himself in current events, and the Joker has sent Punchline out to do what she does as his chief lieutenant, right? The thing is, I have a textless preview of the first few pages of Batman 93, where the fight we've been wondering about is happening. It is Punchline and a couple of thugs versus Harley and Quinzel.
Oh, that should have been expected.
It was actually shorter than you think. After knocking out a couple of thugs, Harley got her hands on one of their assault rifles, aimed and took a shot. Somehow Punchline moved out of the way and just got her ponytail nicked, rushed past Harley Quinn, and used one of her knives to cut a line through Harley's neck.
Ooh.
And that's where the preview ends. This has been written by James Tynion IV with art by Gilliam March and Javier Fernandez. It's scheduled to come out April 15th, which we know right now is not going to happen. But that is a... do I think Harley Quinn died? No, but I think that's a very definitive statement as to how good Punchline can be if she beat Harley with a knife while Harley's packing a gun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to me, that's a straight indication that Punchline is not to be taken lightly.
I still don't like the design of Punchline. I don't know, just kind of bothers me that they're going back to, the clown sidekick of Joker, but she's different this time.
I need to know her origin before I can judge.
I'm trying to withhold judgment, but I just don't like her.
I just want to know what makes this one up. There's got to be something going on here, and I don't want to say she's trained by Joker or anyone else, but she obviously has more skills than I gave her credit for. She's not just walking around carrying a knife because it's flashy. She definitely knows how to use them.
Mm-hmm.
She is something else. I just don't know what that is. Meanwhile, the Infected storyline is finally over in DC Comics. Do you recall the story where the Batman Who Laughs has infected a number of DC heroes, beyond the Secret Six anyway, with dark multiversal energies, bringing out their worst impulses and character traits, right?
Yeah, yeah.
As of Year of the Villain Hell Arisen number 4, this has been undone by Lex Luthor. The Batman Who Laughs, for some reason, has gone directly up against Lex Luthor. And Luthor managed to hit the Batman Who Laughs with an injection of something. And I don't know what exactly it is, but it's supposedly some kind of serum that cut off the dark multiversal energy that the Batman Who Laughs was spreading to the infected. I'm still trying to figure out the science behind that because it doesn't sound like it.
Don't try. It's comic book logic.
Yeah, I know.
Like the worst kind.
I know. It's almost as bad as the Wish
Especially
Away ending.
DC comic book logic, pseudoscience.
But because of the I know that the Batman Who Laughs was like one of the higher ups when it came to the Dark Knight's Metal event, and he is just brimming with dark multiversal energy. He seems to have found a way to spread it to others. Luthor has now cut off that spread, and it seems to have worked to free just about every hero who was under his thrall. The only difference is Hawkman, because as we discussed, his dark counterpart is more or less a previous life he had in a different universe, which has just been brought to the surface. So it's not a matter of getting rid of his worst impulses, it's a matter of getting rid of another self of him that's currently in his body. Different problem.
Yeah.
However, this is where things get really strange.
They weren't already?
Yeah. Apparently, the reason why the Batman Who Laughs went through all this trouble to infect these heroes was not to harass other heroes, was not to take over the world. He did it because he knew that in escalating the fight in such a way with Lex Luthor, Luthor would have to bring him to a plane where Luthor felt like it was home territory. And in this case, he brought him to the plane where Perpetua is still regaining her energies after the Justice Doom War. Perpetua is the multiversal goddess who right now wants to rewrite the Prime DC universe and start over. Right?
All right.
So because he had this fight in front of Perpetua, the Batman Who Laughs somehow convinced Perpetua that he was a better and more effective servant than her, air quotes, dog in Luthor. He led Luthor to reveal where Perpetua was in the first place. He got information from the Phantom Stranger about the survival of the Justice League, which I guess Perpetua thought died for some reason, and that the Justice League still had a chance to bring down her entire plan. And apparently Luthor responded with a series of outbursts that caused Perpetua to second question Luthor, stripped him of all of his special powers that he's gained since she made him an apex predator in the DC universe, and then took the Batman Who Laughs as her new lieutenant and pretty much ejected Luthor from her particular plane of existence. It's... Let me put it this way. It sounds like a story that's progressing well. It just doesn't sound like it's progressing naturally.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
fair.
if Luthor... I understand that Luthor really isn't worth much to her once she stripped him of his extra abilities, but if she picked him because he had the prospects of being an apex predator, why leave him alive, period? Why not squash him then and there before he becomes a nuisance? I'm asking a serious question. I'm not trying to poke holes in the story. I'm asking.
No. I'm thinking. I mean, it's a good question. I mean,
she picked him for an obvious reason. He's very intelligent, but to just dismiss him simply because you think you found something better at that moment, that doesn't remove the intelligence or the potential danger that she saw in him in the first place.
right.
It's a big plot hole that doesn't quite make sense to me. Let alone, does that mean all the infected heroes that the Batman Who Laughs brought with him, were they just swept aside? Were they annihilated? Were they just thrown back to DC for no discernible reason?
Probably. Put everything back to ground zero. Well.
I have a feeling I need to read this miniseries, but I think it's going to be like Dark Knight's Metal. I think by the time I'm done, I'm going to be making a whole lot of sounds that make people question if I'm okay.
It sounds more complicated than they have scope to cover, and I feel like it's going to have more questions at the end than answers. And that kind of reading frustrates me, and DC does that to me all the time.
Yeah.
And I just get tired of it sometimes.
Yeah, and I grant you it's very likely to happen since all the events that have led up to this have come out of miniseries and or runs that were done by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, whom I have no problem with Capullo's art. He just likes to do things in this very thrash kind of style. However, Scott Snyder, we've discussed in the past, I think he's a good creative director. I think he comes with great ideas. However, I think after he does that, he should hand it off to another writer, because it always feels like he loses focus after the first third of the story. And then it gets strange.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm out of ideas. Let's go with something weird.
Meanwhile, Batman and the Outsiders by Brian Hill, Dexter Soy, Veronica Gandini, and Clayton Cowles sounds like it may finally, in the 11th issue, be morphing into something beyond its beginnings. I have made fun of this series in the past because it's basically all of Batman's minority friends melded into one team for some unknowable reason. Black Lightning, Katana, Signal, Cassandra Cain. You know? All these characters feel like they could be a lot more if they were used in a different place. However, as of issue number 11, this team has picked up 2 new members, which may make them one of the most dangerous teams in all of DC. One of them is a character from the very first issues of Batman and the Outsiders, Sophia Ramos. Okay? She was manipulated by Ra's al Ghul into becoming Babylon for him. She is a metahuman who has a high degree of invulnerability, but it kicked in after her... I think she and her dad were in an auto accident, so she has a bit of scarring on her face. And now that Batman has successfully gotten her away from Ra's al Ghul and convinced her to... I don't want to say join his mission, but at least try it. He's taken her to a decommissioned Court of Owls base that he's taken over. And he's basically shown her a wall full of his gear with bat symbols on it, and told her to pick what she wants as well as the name she wants to use to show everyone that she is her own person. So that's relatively intriguing. I mean, she can't fly, but strength and invulnerability combined with an arsenal could be really fearsome. Now, it's the other person that the Outsiders have picked up that should strike a lot of fear into a lot of people. Cassandra Cain's mother is tired of being manipulated by Ra's al Ghul, and she wants to join the Outsiders, if anything, for the time being, to watch over Cassandra. Now, Cassandra doesn't trust her, and she thinks that they should keep her on the Outsiders for the time being, just to watch her, because Cassandra's mother is rather mercurial. She will go where the wind blows. Okay? There's a good reason for that, because Cassandra's mother is Lady Shiva. Lady Shiva is one of the top assassins in all of DC Comics, as well as one of the top-known fighters. She's one of those few people that can take Batman toe-to-toe, and it's often a toss-up as to which one will come out on top. So, like I said, she's mercurial. She's not quite Cheshire, but she's up there.
Right.
This is an intriguing lineup. I may have to pick up a couple future issues to see how this... well, I say that, but I keep forgetting that there is no way to pick up future issues for the time being. I will have to monitor...
there will be?
There will be. I just have to be patient. There will be. I'm not going to be a doomsayer, you know, the world isn't falling, it just needs a chance to change.
True.
However, I'm intrigued by this development. This at least marks the Outsiders as a team that was very different than just cast-off heroes in Batman's orbit. Similar to the run of Detective Comics we read, well, no, I don't think Joanna was there for that, when Batwoman was in charge. That was a very different team that actually included 1 or 2 villains from Batman's universe, and everything developed in very strange ways.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I really did like that one.
It was a fun run. It had a couple story issues, but overall it was a fun run. So, we shall see. Meanwhile, in Justice League number 43 by Robert Venditti and Doug Menke. Okay, so the Eradicator has brought some kind of genetically engineered warriors, like Daxamites, to Earth, and is fighting the Justice League. And because the Eradicator was part of the system that was used to help resurrect Superman post his fight with Doomsday, the Eradicator has been holding onto a sample of Superman's DNA. It's also what he's been basing his current form off of, plus some modifications. As a result of number 43, and in an attempt to get the Eradicator to calm down, the Eradicator is trying to form a police force of some sort to handle galactic-scale things, hence the genetically engineered soldiers. He wanted something else to complete this project, and for some reason Superman decided to hand it over to the Eradicator just to have him slow down. Wonder Woman.
What?
The Eradicator wanted a sample of Wonder Woman's DNA so that he could create enhanced soldiers. Combination Kryptonian, Amazonian DNA.
Sounds kind of scary.
As well as kind of stupid on Clark Kent's part. I mean, if this is what he's after, why give it to him? The Eradicator may not be a supervillain, but he's often shown that he has no ethics about reaching his conclusions. This sounds dangerous beyond dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know why they'd go this particular route. And I haven't read the issue. I've only read a synopsis. I don't know how the Eradicator is going to obtain this part of DNA. I don't know if this means he has to get close to Wonder Woman, or if maybe he just needs a strand of hair or something. This just sounds personal.
Yeah.
So, a few other questions there. Last up in DC comic news. Remember Rick Remender? We were talking about him in his Hearts of Darkness miniseries he proposed for Marvel Comics. He must be bored in the current era of coronavirus, because he also posted on Twitter that he had a pitch for what he called a Justice League of Tomorrow for DC Comics that was turned down. He worked with an artist named Raphael Albuquerque to put together a mock-up of what his team would be. He didn't post a synopsis, but based on the version of Superman that was in this, it's guessed that this team was made up of multiversal components. In other words, heroes from different versions of DC's multiverse put together for a team for an unknown reason. And I admit to being completely intrigued by this lineup, and I'm not often intrigued by Justice Leagues. You know, they often have too much power and not enough imagination, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
This team apparently has the Superman from the world of Batman Beyond, a Firestorm, a Sandman, and I don't mean the Dreamwalker, I mean the DC hero Sandman, the enemy Ace, the Negative Man from the Doom Patrol, a Hawkwoman, an Atom, and that looks like the Ryan Choi Atom, and Poison Ivy.
Whoa.
I sent you guys an image to take a look. This was the art by Mr. Albuquerque, and just looking at this team, I don't know what the mission would be. I'd like to know what the origin of it is. It's very slapdash. There's nothing really unifying the image at all, but it's a very curious group of people to me.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like, he's trying to do, DC's version of Exiles.
I don't know. I don't know what I don't know if this is multiversal. It feels like it because none of these versions of the characters are any I've particularly seen before. The exception of the Superman from the Batman Beyond era. That looks very recognizable. The Firestorm's a bit different because his face, while it's human-shaped, it's red. It's bright red. The Hawkwoman has subtle differences, but is very recognizable. I'm not sure what Atom that is, and I've never seen Poison Ivy in that particular outfit before. Enemy Ace, I don't know very well. And Negative Man, oh, who can tell? He's wrapped up in bandages. I mean, come on. I'd like to know what the mission was. But at this point, unfortunately, unless he expands on that on Twitter, we will never find out. I know, go figure. Last up is our general comic and convention news. This is where we talk about comic books that are not Marvel or DC related, as well as conventions happening all around the world. A GoFundMe has been launched for comic book retailers that may be suffering in this era of low sales due to the COVID-19 virus. It was launched by Mad Cave Studios, who themselves is an independent publisher, and the goal is to help out local comic book shops struggling in the current times. The fundraiser will provide a one-time donation to comic shops around the U.S. to keep employees on payroll, mitigate risk, and keep the lights on. They will be fulfilling requests for aid evenly across the comic book retailers across the nation. I wonder, though, because that GoFundMe would have to be massive to help the comic book shops in existence today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking a look at it now on GoFundMe. It's under Relief Fund for U.S. comic book retailers. Currently sits at $11,260 of its $100,000 goal. 8 people recently donated. It was created 5 days ago, so it's still early in its cycle. They're going to have to hurry up and raise some money. The word has to get out.
Seriously.
Meanwhile, Dynamite Comics, due to the Diamond Distribution shut down, I should say. They've cut their July releases to their top 6 titles and have dropped all merchandise from distribution for the time being.
Oh, damn.
They want to take the pressure off retailers during this period, since they know they're the ones who are initially paying for the product. So, the top 6 Dynamite comics to be released in July will be Vampirella 13, The Boys number 4, Red Sonja number 18, Sacred 6 number 3, Betty Page number 2, and Green Hornet number 2. They are also offering deep discounts to retailers for omnibuses of their series, especially The Boys, particularly because the second season of the Amazon Prime adaptation will be premiering around June of next year. Or, no, June of this year, excuse me. In addition, Dynamite via Comixology is offering free first issues during the coronavirus issues. This includes A Train Called Love, Ash and the Army of Darkness, Betty Page, Charlie's Angels vs. the Bionic Woman, Control, Crackdown, Deja of Mars, Ex-Con, Grand Passion, Great Divide, Intertwined, Peter Cannon, Thunderbolt, Red Team, The Greatest Adventure, and Uncanny. Everything I just listed, their first issues are available right now via Comixology's website. It's not a lot, but it's nice of them to do.
Right.
Meanwhile, Devil's Due Comics decided to go the entire other way. They've made their full digital library free during the coronavirus quarantine period. The digital library includes titles like Boogly Heads, Final Street, Galaxy for Hire, Lord of Gore, and Mercy Sparks. Devil's Due has also said it's taking measures to ensure that those who still want to order physical comics will be safe. Any inbound package is not to be touched for 36 hours by any warehouse staff. Hand sanitizers will be used by associates before packing any order, and any warehouse associate experiencing flu-like symptoms will have to remain at home for a 14-day period. So Devil's Due is taking this very seriously.
That's good.
Meanwhile, because this current viral period is making conventions darn near impossible across the world, a couple of organizers have managed to slap together something happening on the weekend of March 28th and 29th, this coming Saturday and Sunday, and it is for free registration. They're calling it Stay Home Comic-Con. They're very serious. According to the press release, they will have a virtual artist alley, digital booths of small shop owners, chats with visitors via Discord, and they even have an online cosplay contest. They will also have live streams by various artists and or creators. You can register for a free ticket to Online Comic-Con via their website, stayhomecomiccon.nl. I signed up for it today just because what else have I got to do?
So what does it entail?
The sign-up? Or the convention itself?
Yeah, the convention itself. What is it going to consist of?
Well, it's going to be a virtual artist alley and virtual dealers hall. And they have not released a program as of yet. But they do plan to have various online conversations. I imagine there'll be Discord or live streams via Twitch by various creators. They have not said if there's going to be a host or MC for any of these things. I don't know if it's just going to be the creators answering questions as they come, which could be kind of frustrating as text scrolls by. But at this point, I'm willing to take a chance on something just because it's something to do during this period. They do have some events already online, including a book presentation, Panda en et Zwart Dat. I don't know what that is. It's starting to look like a lot of the things here are going to involve European creators. There's a few titles here that I'm having trouble reading.
Interesting.
But they will have on Saturday, March 28th, a live drawing stream, a wig styling workshop at 10 a.m., live drawing with Japanese artist Tomoko Hirabayashi, a room tour of the Dragon's Garden at 10:30, a live chibi drawing session with Sitsuke Draws, Kickstarters for Noobs at 11, as well as live drawing by Kimi Comics, live water painting by Mandy Frank at 11:30, and drawing Pokemon by description without Pokemon knowledge by Pixel Panda. That sounds like more fun than it ought to be.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Lectures for novice fantasy writers, character creation challenge, drawing Pokemon from memory. Yeah, there's various things for people to do online here. It looks like they have panels or online panels every half hour, all the way through to 6 p.m. I'll have to poke into a few of these. Some of these are English, some of these are Spanish. Meanwhile, Vault Comics is launching their own virtual Vault Vanguard Con. Thursday, March 19th, Vault is going to hold a Reddit AMA on the r/comics subreddit from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. During that period, fans will have the opportunity to ask the Vault team whatever questions they like and get advice on any comics-related topic under the sun, according to the press release. I need to read more about Vault Comics. Some of the people involved in this roundtable will be Elliot Rahal, George Mann and Joe Eisma, Max Bemis and Eric Donovan, Mike Koch and Tony Akins, Justin Richards, and more. And one of the conventions I was hoping to go to was postponed. That's WonderCon. It was scheduled to take place April 10th through 12th. However, Funko has decided that they will not allow WonderCon's postponement to stop them from holding their own special online event. They're holding what they call WonderCon Virtual Con, where they will be, I really don't know what they plan to do, but they will be selling exclusives during this virtual Comic-Con, including a Funko apron, Speed Racer Funko sodas, Masters of the Universe Funko sodas, appears to be cereal mascots of the Yummy Mummy and Fruit Brute Funko sodas. Can't believe I said that out loud. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World Funko sodas, Good Luck Rainbow Trolls Funko Pops, Captain Atom, Pichu, and Eevee as Funkos. A Boba Fett Funko, it appears. As well as sorry?
That sounds probably the Mandalorian.
No, it says right here in the title, Star Wars, Boba Fett.
Oh.
It's a special red version. And there's also Coco from the Disney film Coco and the Cheshire Cat in a teacup as limited edition Funkos.
Interesting.
However, another convention has been postponed in the era of COVID-19, and that is Book Expo. Book Expo is held by ReedPop, the company that runs New York Comic-Con, Crunchyroll Expo, Rose City Comic-Con, and several others. It's been postponed from May to July, except this one comes with a bit of a rub. This has actually been moved to the exact same weekend as San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh.
It's also scheduled to happen July 25th and 26th at the Javits Center in New York City. I don't know how plans may change for them, because I was just reading that today the governor plans to retrofit the Javits Center in the next week to turn it into a 10,000 emergency bed hospital for COVID-19 patients. Hey, there's 4 months for them to finish this thing and clean it up, but, New York's been hit especially hard by the COVID virus. So, have to see how that goes. One of the more notorious writers in the current era is Grant Morrison, and he has stated that he thinks that the Silver Age is the best era in comic books. He especially noted that during the Silver Age, fans worldwide were forward-thinking and progressive, and added that the mindset tapped into a youthful energy at the time. I don't know if I can agree with that. The Silver Age was kind of awkward for me. I felt like there were steps forward, but it still felt like comic books and culture in general was trying to feel out where it was headed.
Yeah, it was hit and miss.
Meanwhile, independent publisher Vault Comics has announced a new miniseries that will likely be delayed soon, but it's called Engine Word. It is a Zodiac-inspired 12-issue science fiction comic series. It's being done by George Mann, Joe Eisma, Michael Garland, Hassan Otsame El Howell, and Tim Daniel. The storyline is about... the right way to put it would be celestial beings, one of which inhabits or embodies a different version of the Zodiac, or sign of the Zodiac, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Earth is a long-forgotten ancient myth, and the godlike celestials who embody the surviving Zodiac signs rule with brutal efficiency. However, an engine word named Joss learns that not all is as intended when she discovers and reactivates the head of a fossilized golem. Her destiny ultimately lies somewhere far beyond the borders of her shanty town, and the truth about her imperious rulers will be discovered, unquote. I don't know. There's something about that sounds very familiar, and I can't quite pin down what that is. It almost sounds like a bastardized version of Logan's Run. I'll have to check it out, though. If the execution is fun, it's fun. Meanwhile, two pulp comics icons are about to meet in a crossover this summer.
Who?
Archie and Flash Gordon. It will be a 48-page one-shot titled Archie Meets Flash Gordon. It's going to send Archie and pals to planet Mongo via a spaceship that crash lands in Riverdale. This sounds like a Saturday morning cartoon.
It does.
It's being done by Jeff Parker and artist Dan Parent. It's scheduled to come out this June. That's cute. It's not quite for me, but that's cute. It's not quite as weird as when... Hey, it's not as weird as when Archie met the Predator. I mean, that happened.
Yeah, I remember.
He's also met the Punisher. It's kind of amazing this kid's still alive. The creator of Naruto, his Masashi Kishimoto, his follow-up series, Samurai 8, is going to end with its 43rd chapter.
Huh.
The weekly manga magazine Shonen Jump confirmed Chapter 43 will be the end for Samurai 8, The Tale of Hachimaru. This will give it a full 5 collected volumes by the time its run ends. Kishimoto indicated that he had plans for 10 volumes for this series, with the potential for the story to expand. The series itself debuted officially in May of 2019 with an English translation arriving soon afterwards by Viz Media. Samurai 8 was about the adventures of a boy named Hachimaru, who has severe physical disabilities requiring him to constantly be connected to a life support system. He wished on a shooting star to be cured of his condition and transformed into a samurai warrior. Then Hachimaru finds out he's a prophesized figure who's supposed to save the galaxy as he trains in samurai arts and encounters familiar faces from video games he obsessively played while he was ill. Last up in general comic and convention news, we finally got the question... we got the answer to a question that we hadn't quite asked, but we knew was going to be asked anyway.
Uh-huh.
Since the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are currently Power Rangers in their miniseries...
Yeah, I saw the picture.
Yeah, what's going to happen when they have to summon the Zords? And you knew by the end of the 5th issue of the miniseries they were going to have to summon Zords because Rita Repulsa used her magic size-growing powers on Bebop and Rocksteady.
Oh, no!
Who were getting ready to cause some damage near Central Park in New York. So you can't have that, obviously.
No.
So the question becomes... You know, if the Turtles have already changed the look of the Power Rangers costumes in such strange ways by just being them, does it do anything to the Megazord? And the immediate answer... Seats? Huh?
Bigger seats?
Oh, it got weirder than that, because the immediate answer is, wow, that's different!
What the heck?
I sent you guys an image of the cover. Now, it appears to be the same 5 Zords that were used to create the Megazord, except there's something new in the middle, and I'm having trouble figuring out where exactly it comes from, because that does not look like a Tyrannosaurus to me.
I think there's a additional thing on top of the Zord.
It doesn't look like it's on top, though. There's no indication of the red Tyrannosaurus Zord anywhere. It looks like it's been replaced by a tortoise.
The three red prongs are the only indication of the T-Rex.
So I get the feeling that something else happened here. I don't know if Alpha 5 intervened somehow. But there's definitely something new here. And the other Zords, for the most part, are where they're supposed to be. Now, the arms of the Mastodon or the parts of the Mastodon that became the arms, also appear to have been supplanted by whatever is new in the middle here.
Mm-hmm. Turtle stuff.
Yeah, and I sent you guys an image of the designs of this, or the design sketches of this, and it is noticeably different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, instead of being on the front, the shield is on the back like a shell.
It almost looks like somebody took a big, ugly sledgehammer to the Dragon Zord and just said, there you go.
I think they're trying too hard at this point.
I don't know. I saw this and I just started laughing.
I think it's neat.
I thought it was funny.
I like mechs.
You
Oh, the
would.
hands are different.
Yes, they are. It actually has a cannon on the left hand.
And it has 3 fingers like the turtles, not 5.
Yeah, it's almost like somebody slammed Omega Supreme into the Megazord and said, just be one thing.
Be all the things, but be one thing.
I'm intrigued. I'm now intrigued by this 5th issue. I want to see how this comes about. I want to see who summons it and why. Because at the end of issue 4 there, yes, the Turtles summoned the Zords, and they formed the standardized Megazord, the one that everyone knows from the TV show. So I want to know where this Turtle Zord came from.
Maybe they reprogrammed it to make it their own, and it formed to their personalities and will. I don't know.
That's a
The only
nice
other
try.
thing-
That's a nice try. I applaud the try.
Honestly, the only thing I could think of is Metalhead somehow involved with this.
Well, I haven't seen him so far in the miniseries, so I doubt it. I'm so confused and intrigued. I do want to see how this ends. I'm just laughing at it.
Yeah.
The subject of this week is Excalibur from 2019, Marvel Comics' latest attempt at the multiversal X-Men, who, if I remember correctly, their first debut was back in like 1988. The writer is Tini Howard, the art is by Marcus Toe, colors by Eric Arcenega, and the letters by VC's Corey Pettit. And Excalibur is easily one of those things that could have blown up in the faces of Jonathan Hickman and everybody who was trying to relaunch the X-Men's line. I can't speak for you guys, but I found this kind of kitschy and fun. It falls outside the usual superheroics I expect from comic books.
Well, in the realm of fantasy is kind of my thing. I know it's not really necessarily Jesse's thing, but I enjoyed it.
Well, I didn't hate this, but it's definitely I didn't hate this, but I found.
Well, that's a start at least. That's good.
I didn't hate
no.
it. Ah, my wedding night.
Well, there's some things like the appearance of the dragon. We'll get into that. Was kind of neat, actually. But some of the characters there's a lot of finger pointing and selfishness going along through all of this.
Well, there is. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
the X-Men are still trying to get used to their current status quo as Krakoa when this series picks up.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is still very new, including Betsy Braddock's body at this point, but that's a different part of the story. The very first pages were a little bit off-putting only because it focused initially on Camelot, which is on a multiversal plane known as Otherworld. It's some place that both exists simultaneously but separate from Britain, as the comics put it. And it looks like Camelot is under siege by some other party. That's not very clear in the beginning, but they do refer to whoever it is as the forces of the White Witch.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't very well explained in this first volume, but it's evident that she's going to be a big problem. However, the bigger problem is that not only is Arthur not on the throne, but Marvel's versions of Merlin and Roma, as far as I know, have not been resurrected so far, and somehow this entire plane has been left to their Queen Regent, Morgan Le Fay, whom, if you've read Marvel Comics for a long amount of time, you know that Morgan, at her best, is not as murderous as usual. She is not nice in any real sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, she's utterly ticked because her forces are trying to keep the White Witch's people at bay. Meanwhile, something strange is growing in her source of power, her scrying pool in the middle of Camelot Castle. And when I say she's upset, she nearly drowned one of her top knights trying to show him what's growing in the well.
Yeah. She's like, get it from the bottom of the well. What is it? Can you see it?
Yeah, and it's
like, well, lady.
well, I mean, it's not even very well shown to the reader at this point because it's beneath water. The colors are kind of muted.
Mm-hmm.
All you see is that there's a bunch of vines and what appears to be flowers or ivy growing up from the bottom of the pool,
Mm-hmm.
which could be a number of things. But we slam from that right into Braddock Academy. Now, the first Captain Britain in Marvel Comics is Brian Braddock. Now, at his worst, he's been a bloviator, a bit of a hardhead and kind of egotistical, but he's grown way beyond that. He's opened an academy for magically inclined students. Think of the Braddock Academy for magical folk the same as the Xavier Academy is for mutants.
Mm-hmm.
He just wanted a place for them to learn in safety and learn how to exist within society. Not heroes, not weapons, just people.
Mm-hmm.
Which is especially important to Brian because he may not be a mutant, but he's a magically enhanced human, as well as married to a Fey woman, and now has a daughter. Margaret, whom... She looks to be no older than maybe 5 in this series. I am terrified to find out what Margaret could be when she grows up.
Right? That's a lot of potential.
Oh, well, yeah, between Captain Britain and the powers of Megan, for crying out loud, this child could be something awe-inspiring.
Or could be powerless just because genetics are weird like that sometimes.
The odds of that are kind of low, if only because her mother is a Fey queen.
I didn't say it was impossible. I said it was, could happen.
She is going to be amazing. But the Braddock Academy, as it appears to be going through a closing for the semester, Brian is also entertaining a visit by his twin sister, Elizabeth, or Betsy, as she likes to be called.
Mm-hmm.
And she is still getting used to something that happened not long before the end of the prior Uncanny X-Men series, where she got her original body back. She's no longer in the body of the Japanese assassin Kwanon.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the resurrection protocols, even though that body's been destroyed, Kwanon has been brought back. Which, while Betsy, when she's done with her visit, goes to Krakoa, and that momentary stare down between Betsy and Kwanon...
That was palpable.
They could have destroyed the island in that.
Yep.
That was chilling, and I couldn't tell if it was a case of, oh god, you, or I have to stab that.
Maybe a little bit of both.
It could have gone either way. But the next scene has to do with Trinary, a mutant who has technopathic abilities. She can speak to technology and control it. The conversation she has with Apocalypse is jarring only because, as much as the dialogue sounds like Apocalypse, it sounds like him turned down a bit, as if he's not in murderous rage mode. He's somewhere around a 6 at this point in his life. Because he seems to have given up his former ideas, I should say, of mutant supremacy through Darwinism, and is currently satisfied with the strength of Krakoa's society on a whole. And as much as you would like to think maybe he can make something better out of himself, you just can't get past the idea that this is still Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
No, not many people can.
No, and that's why he doesn't attend parties and why he doesn't insert himself into a lot of social situations. And, I mean, the look from Gambit as he's walking by the window staring at Apocalypse walking by spoke volumes.
Yeah, just imagine all the things Apocalypse has done to him.
Apocalypse has done a moderate amount to him, but unfortunately for Gambit, all of his woes trace back to Apocalypse. How much do you know about Gambit's history?
I know he was a horseman. I forget which one, but that's the extent of what I know.
He was deaf.
There was a Okay, and there was a possibility he might have been a 4th Summers brother, but I'm not entirely sure how that panned out.
According to X-Men The End, he is. However, he's not a Summers brother in the typical sense, whereas the others were all born from the same woman. Gambit is pretty much the the result of DNA stolen from Scott Summers to make a new host body for Mr. Sinister by Mr. Sinister.
Gotcha. I was wondering how that panned out.
Yeah, it's why Gambit's powers are somewhat similar to Cyclops', but still a big step away. And the idea was, according to that miniseries, Sinister was just growing himself a new body. But Sinister himself, his genetic control over his own personal self, was something given to him by Apocalypse. He's not a mutant, he's an augmented human. And when Apocalypse found out that Sinister was trying to grow himself an all-powerful body so that Sinister could break himself away, Apocalypse just interrupted this whole thing, and instead of doing super villainous stuff, he wasn't going to murder a baby because he had no idea how strong it was. It had a right to try to survive, according to his dogma. So instead, he had one of his other minions take it and put it in an orphanage in the Louisiana Bayou.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why Gambit is what he is.
That makes sense. We should do a character study on him.
Eventually. But that was a bit much of an aside. Anyway, Trinary needs Apocalypse's help, because a new portal has grown up in their portal hub, the Grove of Theoretical Gates. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to go anywhere. It won't open for any particular reason. However, Apocalypse is apparently old enough that he senses what could be coming through this gate. He approaches it with a crystal he has from his private vault that has some sort of energy imbued in it, and when he approaches the gate, it lights up, but it still won't open. At best, it cracks, like it's trying to force its way through something. Now, given what Krakoan gates are made out of, they're organically grown via flowers and vines, all of a sudden you can imagine what's growing in Morgan Le Fay's well of power.
Mm-hmm.
Which puts a very ancient mutant directly at odds with a very ancient sorceress.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Morgan Le Fay has appeared to a coven of witches in Britain, and coven of witches is a nice way to put it. Only because they appear to be a bunch of magic geeks kind of playing witches in a school.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say playing witches, I don't mean drama, I mean noobs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're even more shocked to find out that they've been assaulted by spirits that have been led by Morgan Le Fay, who is entreating upon them to find the witch breeds who are polluting her wellspring. Witch breeds is the word that Morgan prefers to use for mutants, which is somewhat like other racial colloquialisms, according to the way she's using it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And she is shutting off magic on the earthly plane until somebody brings her the witch breeds that she considers responsible for polluting her well. Which is
That's a big ask.
It is. I mean, you're asking a bunch of humans and amateur magicians to go up against mutants, who at this point are almost entirely one tribe. I mean, you might as well just ask them to hunt like hunt this elephant with a rubber band and a toothpick.
I mean, she wasn't asking them either.
Oh, no, she was pretty clear about it. I don't know why she preferred to make her voice known here instead of, like, I don't know, Doctor Strange, Brother Voodoo, Doctor Doom. No, she went this route.
So maybe there might have been her connection to England itself, so...
Oh, that's a possibility, yeah. Betsy Braddock is being summoned by one of the mutants of the Five, the Resurrectionists on Krakoa, who used to be known as Gold Balls, but is now going by Egg, now that he knows what he's being producing from his body, which, now that I've said that, sounds way worse than I intended.
Not sure which one's better, though, Gold Balls or Egg.
I meant my description, but either way.
Yeah.
They need Betsy's help to get someone out of the resurrection area because they won't leave. And I guess everyone forgot to mention to Betsy that they were planning on bringing her older brother back to life. And they really should have told her.
Yeah, that's something that's, say it in person, not over a text, too.
Well, it's not just that. Jamie Braddock, the oldest member of the siblings, he's extremely dangerous.
And psycho.
Well, that's part of the reason why he's dangerous. He has no moral center, really.
Nope.
But the big problem is he's a reality manipulator. He perceives the world very differently. He can see the strings, like these giant red threads that hold reality together, and he can pull them, pluck them, and cut them to recreate things as he sees fit.
Mm-hmm.
So when he forces that weird golden fluid back into the egg, he's not doing it as a matter of psychokinesis. He's doing it because he's altering reality as they stand there.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't want anything to do with humans. He sees them as too normal, and probably the reason why his life was kind of weird before. And mind you, this is a guy who, when he was half crazy, brought Psylocke back from the grave just because he was bored and felt like she could provide some entertainment.
Yeah, he's not right.
No, he is not. And it's kind of odd that after she pretty much tells Jamie off about Jamie not wanting to deal with Brian even, his own brother, simply because Brian's a full human, she stomps her way out of the resurrection chamber, comes across Apocalypse, and would rather actually talk to him than say anything to Jamie right now.
That speaks volumes.
It says way more than it ought to. Apparently Apocalypse is aware that the portal that they're trying to get through goes to Avalon, and he's convinced that they need an item of power to get through it, an object that's been to Otherworld before. And he tasked Betsy with that because he knows that Betsy's brother is Brian Braddock, Captain Britain, and to become Captain Britain, you had to choose the amulet between the sword and the amulet when given such a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants to bring Brian here. He doesn't want Betsy to steal the amulet, doesn't want her to cajole or mind control her brother. Apocalypse wants Betsy to just bring Brian to Krakoa so they can try it out. Which is also unusually kind for Apocalypse. Meanwhile, when Betsy uses the Krakoan portal to the Braddock Academy, Megan's upset because Brian's suiting up for something. He's been summoned to Otherworld. Doesn't know why. And Betsy doesn't take the opportunity to talk about Jamie because that's a lot to unpack. Brian may be a multiversal superhero, but there's still only a few things a human psyche can take at a time. And Betsy's agreed to go with Brian to Otherworld because they have a portal there that they're trying to understand, and maybe it's all connected. It's a fair assumption, anyway. However, as soon as they arrive, Morgan Le Fay is not a good host. She sees that the champion of Avalon, Captain Britain, has come forth to them, but he's also brought a witch breed with them, as she puts it. And he just knew things were going to go downhill from there.
Mm-hmm.
On Avalon, Apocalypse is summoning more mutants to try and help him understand what's going on with this portal. He has Trinary go get Rogue, who is still hanging out with her husband Gambit at the time and will not leave her alone with him for obvious reasons. And he wants Rogue to take off her gloves and grasp this portal in hope of draining off enough energy to break through to the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess is a pseudo-appropriate use of her powers, but still feels kind of risky.
Yeah.
Yes.
Apocalypse has also summoned Jubilee because she was one of the last people to see Betsy on the island, and maybe she had some insight as to what Betsy was thinking before she left. Back on Avalon, Morgan Le Fay has sent her witches to attack both Captain Britain and Betsy simultaneously, and to say they were outclassed is putting it mildly. Morgan manages to corrupt Captain Britain himself, and before Brian's entirely overcome, he starts to force the Amulet of Power onto Betsy. He was pretty obvious about it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the X-Men are still trying to crack the portal from the other side, and Rogue has taken hold of the sides of the portal in hopes of opening it. This gives Apocalypse just enough of an opening to send a psychic message to Betsy to put a serious amount of psychic energy into the pond in hopes of cracking the portal open so that they can either seal it or get Betsy through. Of course, Betsy has the ability to form a psychic claymore, so that's not too hard for her.
Mm-hmm.
And she does thrust into the pond, but instead it breaks the portal and seals it temporarily. It also puts Rogue into an odd sort of magical slumber that she can't be awoken from, and she's enwrapped with Krakoan vines and flowers into a strange sort of Snow White situation.
Yeah.
Which leaves Psylocke on her own versus Morgan Le Fay, and her new champion, her brother. And Brian, at the last second, manages to just kind of thrust the Amulet of Power into her hand. And with pretty much the last segments of his will, begs her to run away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Betsy puts it on just before the sword is about to strike her head. So, when she reappears, somehow the amulet has taken her back to Krakoa in the theoretical portals room where Gambit is trying to fight Apocalypse over what's going on with Rogue. And when everyone realizes she's there, not only is Betsy standing in this room, but she's standing there in a brand new Captain Britain set of armor.
Which is really awesome.
It's a great design. It incorporates, it has the classic colors of Britain's flag. It even has a pattern that's recognizable as, you know, more or less the basic pattern of the Union Jack, except they took out several lines so that it appears to be a giant red X crossing over her breastplate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an interesting cross-culture costume. Except the leader of the Coven of Witches and Morgan Le Fay entreated early in this issue had sacrificed the rest of her coven to Le Fay for her own freedom. She's taken several crystals of power and gone to something called Coven Aqaba that she decides to join. Which is not a positive. Because Aqaba is the name of the town where Apocalypse was created in. Not born.
Should give everybody pause.
Yeah. Now, Aqaba is not... Now, Apocalypse is not genetically created. He is a naturally born mutant with abilities that came about back in ancient Egypt. When I say Apocalypse was created there, Aqaba is the town where a young Ensabanur learned his only the strong survive philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the town that more or less formed Apocalypse. I admit, the beginning of issue 2 took me a little while to understand how it fit in the story, when Apocalypse is watching a pair of mutant twins who have the ability to find their way no matter where they are, and they accidentally drown. This is supposed to be in the 4th century in the English Channel. It took me a very long time to figure out how all this could possibly connect.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed just kind of weirdly anecdotal. But come back to the current timeline, it is Betsy Braddock now as Captain Britain, with Gambit, Rogue still comatose in her bed of flowers, Jubilee, and they're being ferried to Britain by Captain Kate Pryde. This must have been very early in the run of the Marauders, because Pryde still has that little sloop she started out with.
And her nose is still broken and bandaged.
Yeah.
That thing she stole from San Diego?
I think it's the one she originally got to Krakoan when she was hauling whiskey for Wolverine.
Yeah, that's what she stole from San Diego.
And Gambit is he's not his usual self. He's not joking, because whatever's happening to Rogue is something brand new, and he doesn't know how to deal with it.
Nope.
Everyone is joking around him, and he is not having it.
Which is odd, since he would be the first one to join in on such things.
Typically, yeah.
In all other times, except for when it comes to Rogue.
Yeah, and just when it looks like Gambit's about to lose his temper is when they're attacked by a group of Selkies, which are Scottish water demons, and I'm trying to decide, because they look like people with rubbery skin like seals, dark hair, and very big teeth.
Yes, very sharp.
Yeah,
They're not the same as sirens, for those of you wondering.
No.
They're different.
Yeah.
No, and it appears that their primary target isn't even the X-Men or Rogue. They're all after Captain Britain.
Mm-hmm.
Betsy jumps off the boat and makes a swim for it, and all the Selkies follow her instead. The problem for the people on the boat, though, especially Kate, she's looking for the lighthouse of the original Excalibur, which is supposed to be on the coastline they're headed for, but there's no light. No knowledge as to why the lighthouse is offline, either. Once Betsy reaches the shore and figures out the Selkies can't leave the water, she uses her telekinetic abilities to lift Rogue, Gambit, and Jubilee off the boat, thankfully, and keep them dry. And when they walk up the coast, they find that the lighthouse is just gone. It's not there. Except Betsy can see something the others can't. There's a bunch of people in green hoods walking through the area. And to me, this is where Excalibur started to differentiate itself from the other X-Men series, in that Betsy can see druids, who are somehow Sorry?
I was going to ask, because that's not really very well explained at this point. How come she can see them and they can't? Is it because they're linked to Britain's past?
Linked to the Earth.
They're linked to the Earth. They're linked to the very soul of Britain. And one of those kind of undefined abilities of Captain Britain is that Captain Britain is the embodiment of Britain itself.
Okay.
Its
right.
heart,
That
its
makes
soul,
sense.
its strength, its valor. The Captain of Britain is supposed to be the best attributes of all, and is connected inherently to the heart and soul of the country via both Avalon and magical means.
Gotcha.
So if it's on Britain, she has a chance to sense it in some way. So the Druids appear to have no issues with Captain Britain themselves, and the people that destroyed the lighthouse, according to the Druids, are witches from Coven Aqaba. They came to cut off Excalibur's or the X-Men's potential seat of power in the area. Who knew how useless that would be? I mean, I did not expect Rogue's bed of flowers to suddenly grow a lighthouse around them.
Nope.
Especially with Rogue sitting at the top in the light section, where the light's supposed to be. I mean...
It was a pretty cool graphic, though.
Oh yeah, it's graphically interesting, and they put it right in the multiversal point where the lighthouse stands, which is very nice. Which is something that's probably not explained unless you read the original Excalibur. The lighthouse is positioned at kind of a multiversal focal point. The walls between dimensions are kind of weak there, and the lighthouse serves as a guardianship as well as a way to it's purposefully, as they put it in the prior comics, a stitch that holds the multiversal points together. Mm-hmm. It's an access point. The only problem is, though, is that Jubilee, Gambit, and Captain Britain don't know what to do from this moment. Great, the lighthouse is back. What's next?
Yeah.
And they go to sleep at different points. Now, Jubilee had a troubling damn nightmare.
Yeah.
She left Shogo back on Krakoa to be watched by Megan at this point, I'm guessing. But she has a nightmare that Apocalypse, for some reason, had come to the lighthouse with Shogo in his hand, talking about how foolish Jubilee was for leaving a human on Krakoa. And this dream version of Apocalypse was mentioning how small and how human Shogo was while he's putting his hand over Shogo's head. It gave me chills. Not just because it's a dream, but because if Apocalypse is not feeling Krakoa, that feels like something very much Apocalypse-like. This little weak thing in my presence should not be, would be the way he'd normally put it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Captain Britain's having her own troubling dream about a fiery wolfhound with a sword on its back that takes her to a statue of Apocalypse that has a couple plates in his hand. And it's very obvious someone was sending a message because while the plates have food and sustenance, it's printed on these plates, he will use us, we can use him.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
And while Betsy is eating the fruit from this plate, the wolf is walking away, saying, "You can trust me, Betsy. I'm a good girl." Which just added to the questions as to what could be going on here. The way the word bubbles are written, it looks telepathic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, it's this wolfhound of flame.
Yeah. That has to be symbolizing something. I mean, it's not like she's playing Okami in her head. Unfortunately, Betsy was actually woken up by a sound from her dream, some kind of weird purring sound, and when her eyes snap open, there's a small hand reaching for her face. Turns out Jubilee used the portals to go back to Krakoa to get her son, who is now very much into the color purple, which is Betsy's current hair color.
Which to
and
me
in his
make
mouth.
sense.
Yeah. And he was eating that hair, which is very much baby-like.
Because purple tastes good.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had that experience. So, when they get back, Betsy can see the druids reapproaching the lighthouse. And they're coming because they know that Coven Akaba is on the attack and they're on their way here right at this moment. However, it's not like the usual thing where you can suddenly dig up a moat and set traps and light fires and everything, because the druids were only just ahead of Coven Akaba. It was really strange to have Betsy and Gambit and Jubilee try to fight off these Coven members while Apocalypse is contacting Betsy psychically, just asking if she needs his assistance. This is another one of those points where things were just kind of weirdly off-kilter, because usually if Apocalypse feels like doing something, he does it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be scientific, curious, or if it's just a rampage, he does it. He kept asking Betsy if she wanted his help. Like he refused to move without it for some reason. Until the last minute when he just decided to take it upon himself to do it because he wanted Betsy to assist with things in Otherworld. He knew something was off and it could have to do with Rogue's condition. So he volunteered. He came through the portal at the base of the lighthouse, charged up some kind of energy blast, and blew a hole through the lighthouse while taking down most of the members of Coven Akaba in front of him.
Yeah.
It was even more disturbing when he really looked like he was ready to guard this place, and he suddenly produced this hammer that looked like a sledge version of Mjolnir out of I don't know what. And when he says, defending the lighthouse, it is a place of power for mutant kind, and I will not see it fall into enemy hands. I'm looking at this panel while he's saying this with this hammer, and I felt he meant that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Gambit does not like the idea of leaving Rogue in Apocalypse's care, but at the same time, it's one of those things where you can oddly take him at his word. He means what he says, and when he says no one's going to breach the lighthouse, he's serious.
Mm-hmm.
He also offers to take the baby from Jubilee as well while she goes with them, and the phrase, no thanks passed her lips. I have a feeling she meant something else, but yeah, no thanks was what she said.
Yeah.
Those were kind words.
Yeah, so Betsy uses the powers imbued in her as Captain Britain to take Jubilee, Gambit, and herself to Otherworld. And as soon as they're dropped in, Shogo vanishes. Just gone. And looming over the three mutants is a gigantic dragon. Think Dracarys, except he actually went to the gym.
First thing that came to my mind was the Maleficent's dragon.
That's a fair comparison.
Yeah.
The third issue had kind of a shocking opening, just like the second one, though. When we start out, we're in a neighborhood in New York where a man who is in a disheveled home full of, I almost said potted plants, but they're just pots of dirt and beer bottles. And he's just watching kids play soccer, and he looks kind of wistful, like he's thinking about something. As soon as he steps on the ground, he starts to create seismic shockwaves. This is Richter from X-Force and the New Mutants and the Exterminators, whose powers appear to have gotten exponentially stronger and just completely out of control. He cannot touch ground without creating an earthquake. And he's depressed because he's worried that if he ever tries to cross a Krakoan portal, he might destroy the island just by being there.
Mm-hmm.
And while he's feeling sorry for himself, Apocalypse is contacting him via his mind, and he just won't go. He's too scared. When he opens up that casket-sized box of dirt and just lays in it and covers his head, oh, man. That is a guy who's feeling low.
Why does he have to sleep in dirt? Or does he just choose to?
He just chooses to. He's always felt very comfortable with ground under his feet.
Gotcha.
You know, it's just something he feels a commune to. But he's always been a
I didn't know if
producer.
it was like something that dampened his powers or helped him control it, or
No, it's always been kind of odd because in this series they upped it to the point where he's a full-on geomancer. Usually he just creates seismic shockwaves. He could fire them off in blasts, or he could create earthquakes. This is a different development.
He's like full-on earthbender here.
Yeah. I did like the look on Morgan Le Fay's face when she's trying to talk to Coven Akaba and then she realizes there's a dragon out the window.
Yeah, it's like behind her shoulder, and she like, what? What is this?
Yeah,
You
what
see this little dot?
I love the voice. What in all of Avalon? And this dragon that is now hanging out with the burgeoning Excalibur is Shogo. Evidently, Avalon doesn't affect mutants very greatly, but it affects humans rather strongly. And in the case of Shogo, I don't know if it's via wish or if the Fae in the area just think it's funny, but they took this 1-year-old boy and made him a dragon.
Basically, the younger you are, the more imagination you have, and the more potential you release out once you cross that threshold. Is what I got.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
And
what they
he
kind
is
of described.
he is literally a toddler.
I must say though, I like Captain Britain's armor in that it fits in both the area of Avalon and as an earthly superhero. The transformations in the outfits of Jubilee and Gambit, though, those were amazing.
I liked them all.
You know,
I
what?
didn't really notice the changes in their outfits.
Yeah, Gambit's outfit went from a slick, I guess you could say, modern thief to a classical one, more of a rogue type outfit with a hood.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
Rogue.
Jubilee, it took me a while to pin down until I realized that because of the goggles instead of sunglasses, she's a dragon rider.
Yep.
I thought
Good
for a
thing,
while
too.
clerical, but the goggles just kind of kicked it over the finish line for me.
Mm-hmm.
And Gambit is he is not himself. He's still not having anything going on here. He just wants to fix Rogue.
He is being a total butt right now.
Yeah. You know what? I kind of understand it, though, because Gambit, in his relationships, in his habits, in his adventures, he's used to being in control. He didn't like Bishop for a very long time because Bishop had information on him that made him uncomfortable. And this is the same type of thing. Everything going on with Rogue is way out of his control, and he is lashing out, unfortunately.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Shogo has agreed to take his mother and everybody else to the castle, because why not? I can fly!
And it's really cute. Oh, you want to take us there? And he's like nodding enthusiastically. I was like, oh, what a cute little dragon.
Yeah. And the three mutants do drop in on Castle Avalon. However, things do not go their way. There's just too many people there. And when Betsy had to ask permission from Jubilee to have her son breathe fire in the courtyard, I don't quite know. That was very responsible, yet at the same time, is that ever a conversation you expected to have? Jubilee, have your baby breathe fire there!
Well, she's being polite and respectful that, Jubilee is his mother.
I get that point, but where did you ever ask someone if you could borrow their infant because it's a great weapon?
X-Men?
Well, I was going to say only in X-Men, yeah.
While Dragonfire is being used, unfortunately, the castle has decided to employ its greatest weapon. Brian Braddock transformed, and he looks like a Death Knight out of Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Complete with a weird mask he's got in his face. And before things get too deep, the Dragonfire interrupts them. And Shogo grabs them, and he flies away again. Meanwhile, Morgan Le Fay's message to Captain Britain about being one reluctant warrior queen to another.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if that was taunting, if that was respectful, or if that was just, we gonna throw down, woman.
I think it was begrudging respect.
No, I think it might have been that latter one Jeremy mentioned.
Well, Morgan Le Fay always had a way of saying things like a backhanded comment.
Yeah, that's what it sounds.
It could be a compliment or an insult, but it's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, that's what I kind of feel for this.
Meanwhile, Apocalypse is still in the Excalibur lighthouse, the grown one, and is experimenting with ancient crystals that appear to have the energy of old mutants, which harkens back to the beginning of issue 2 and those poor twins that died centuries ago. And he needs fully charged crystals if he wants to crack the Avalon portal. Now, he decides to go to New York to pick up Richter, and he goes through the Central Park gate. When he starts walking through there, I admit I had to start laughing at the populace, who are just watching this ancient, known mutant terrorist stride through the park, and one woman grabs her boyfriend, get your stuff, we're leaving. That would be the first thing going through my mind. It wouldn't be staring at all, it would just be, okay, we gotta go.
And that's our cue to leave. Bye-bye. Leave your things.
Or asking if you taken a picture.
Get your camera out. Take a photo.
Yeah, but Apocalypse goes straight to Richter's apartment, rips open the box of dirt he's laying in, and he wants to take him to what he calls home. The implication, obviously, is Krakoa, even though he eventually takes Richter to Britain instead. There was something strangely fatherly in the way he spoke to Richter. He knew Richter's powers were off the wall, and he knew that Richter could control them.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost the way you wish Professor Xavier would have spoken to his students in the past.
Yep.
But I don't know what exactly he did, but whatever he did, Richter's powers were well enough under control. He did take him through the portal to Britain.
Oh, I think he made him promise, like, anything you destroy, I can fix.
That was a strong statement, which, again, is strangely true.
Yes.
But I do like that when Richter's looking out at the bay there, and he just looks in awe as to where they are. There's that voice behind him, "You're not Captain Britain." And the person asking is an actual former member of Excalibur himself, as well as an Excalibur ally in Pete Wisdom, member of MI-13, Marvel's fictional super spy agency for the nation of Britain.
Oh, yeah.
Pete has that ability to create like these hot plasma knives that shoot from his fingertips. Never took a superhero name. He figures those are for... well, you know what? I can't use even the appropriate words that he would use from the comic books. Basically, he thought superhero names were stupid. He's not doing costumes. He's not doing funny names. He is Pete Wisdom, agent of Her Majesty's Secret Service.
A suit is kind of his costume.
Not entirely wrong, but it can be fun.
Yeah. So, evidently, Excalibur has made it back from Avalon, and things have not gotten better. Rogue is still comatose. Gambit is still mercurial and a little bit pissy, which is made even worse considering all of Excalibur, including Captain Britain, or all the mutants with Captain Britain anyway, been summoned to Buckingham Palace to answer to the Queen. And Gambit has to stride through a group of humans who have just learned that Captain Britain has been replaced by a mutant.
Yeah, and there's some fanboys in there that are PO'd that it's a female.
Yeah,
I bet you.
Cue your usual hostilities.
Mm-hmm.
And
Any change has hostilities.
Yeah, and unfortunately, in Gambit's current mindset, he's not in the mood for hostilities.
Oh no!
Somebody threw an empty scotch bottle at him. Not only did he throw it back, he charged it up first.
I like him so much.
Oh,
He's
love
one
how
of my favorites.
I love how he says, it takes the good old days. It's like, wow, we're rolling way back.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, I mean, Richter and Jubilee are talking while Captain Britain has a one-on-one with the Queen as the only official representative of, Britain for the mutant nation at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And Richter's feeling much better, and suddenly there's that explosion of pink-purple energy outside, and Richter says, maybe Gambit should talk to him too. And I did like Jubilee's response of, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. When it comes to Gambit talking to Apocalypse, oh god. And by the time they get outside, Gambit's still among the crowd, holding one of the signs they've been waving in his face over his head, charging that up while he's ripping it in half. This has disaster written all over it.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, he could have killed every single one of these people. He's just putting up a show.
There was a small part of amazement to me, though, that when Richter and Jubilee caught up to this moment, and Jubilee's yelling, "We were told to behave!" Gambit looks back while he's ripping up the sign. "They threw a bottle at me!" "Oh, fair enough." And they start attacking the crowd.
Like, they threw a bottle at me. Huh, fair enough. It's just like your nonchalant response, like, yeah, that's fair.
It's like they don't need it. They don't need that much provocation.
I couldn't tell if Gambit was being kind, informative, or just threatening when somebody yelled, "They're dangerous!" "Hell yes, we are!"
I think he's just throwing all kinds of bravado just to scare people. He's just trying to. I feel like he's doing this just to blow off some steam or get a rise out of people.
I know, but the thing he's not measuring is that he's walking around as one of the cohorts of Captain Britain. I don't think he understands what that says to the British people.
I'll be honest, at this point in time, I don't think he cares.
I understand that he doesn't care, but you still need to, because everything is precarious right now. I mean, Betsy Braddock has a title she never wanted, but it's one she has to take because her brother can't use it right now. And now she is the official representative and superhero of Britain. As soon as she got that armor, that's it. She's it. Yep. And she's going to have to deal with all these people who, regardless of whether or not you like them, you need to be able to defend them, and they need to feel secure. Otherwise, you're going to get larger and larger moments like you just had there.
Mm-hmm.
So he does need to hold his temper a bit. Meanwhile, Megan is on Krakoa, and she is not dealing with things well. I mean, she and her daughter are safe enough there, but it's not home, and Brian is still trapped in Avalon.
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel bad for her, because when it comes to the hierarchy of characters, Megan is very much on, I don't want to say the innocent, but she's one of those more bright and shiny people in the Marvel Universe.
That we need to protect and keep alive for as long as possible.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, she's being taunted by somebody she didn't even know was on the island, Jamie Braddock. I mean, she obviously has no love lost for her brother-in-law, but A, he was supposed to be dead, B, he's a jerk. He's even inviting Megan to do some very adult things on the island because he thinks that's the way things go. Meanwhile, Jubilee shows him what Krakoan incident adjudication looks like when she punches him in the jaw.
Mm-hmm.
Apocalypse has also asked Gambit and Richter to go deep into the earth and steal some crystals. He needed a geomancer and a thief for this mission, as he puts it. And I like that on the way down, while Richter is moving the earth so they can make it there, Gambit comes to the realization, wait, why do you need a thief unless somebody else owns these things?
Yeah, that's a good question. One that I had too, like, wait, why these two?
Yeah.
Among all the things that Gambit is, stupid isn't one of them.
Yeah, and unfortunately there is a tribe of druids down there they run across.
Uh-huh.
And Richter's powers seem to intrigue the druids.
They're in awe by him.
Yeah. They sense a kindred spirit. His powers may not have been as learned as the druids. His were more inborn, but at the same time, he's one of them as they see it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Gambit is not, so they want to throw him into a pit.
And he stole from them, so...
Well, there's that.
Yeah, that's more than one strike against him.
Yeah, they gave Richter some of the powered-up crystals he needs, and then they opened up a chasm under Gambit, which makes things even worse. But meanwhile, Captain Britain is trying to strike some kind of peace treaty with Coven Aqaba. She meets with them in their coven. And things go very poorly in several respects. It appears that Coven Aqaba is running a full-on information and disinformation public relations campaign against Betsy Braddock. She's a mutant, therefore should not be Captain Britain. She's a woman, therefore should not be Captain Britain. And was stupid enough to use dragon fire in Avalon, therefore she cannot be Captain Britain. Which, to be fair, Betsy didn't know that had a cost.
Yeah, nobody did.
Well, Coven Aqaba did, but, you know, they're well read on the issue. Evidently, dragon's fire can kind of weaken the walls between realities, allowing different monsters to pour through into the earthen plane. I'm not going to say she was suckered. She reacted appropriately based on what she knew. She just didn't know this would be a cost. This is one of those examples where Betsy is a smart warrior, but she has a lot to learn about Avalon in particular. You know, Brian's always taken the lead in that. He's always handled things. During a period, he was actually the ruler of Avalon. He's not available right now. The most surprising part at the end of issue 4, though, was Apocalypse viewing a large green portal where monsters are pouring through, and he said that he's been working towards something towards the beginning. Then that apparently included what happened to Rogue, her weird comatose state. Apocalypse has been playing some kind of unknown long game. So, cut to issue 5. Richter does manage to save Gambit from that chasm he's falling into as a result of the druids, but he had to use up the energy in the crystal he was holding to do so. I almost had to laugh as Gambit's bouncing off the walls of this chasm, and Richter's just using his powers to buffet him on the way down.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's trying to save him, but there's a small part of me that wonders if he's trying to teach him some kind of strange lesson.
I don't think I think he's literally trying to soften the blows. He doesn't seem to be that kind of character.
Yeah. Well, he used to be, for sure. Yeah. But when Richter and Gambit get back to the surface, all of a sudden it's like a Godzilla movie up there. Or maybe Witch in the Wardrobe. And they have to defend themselves from it. Meanwhile, in the middle of London, Betsy Braddock and Pete Wisdom are trying to defend themselves from a Hydra. And
not Hail Hydra,
yeah.
a Hydra.
Yeah. And, Pete is getting strangely flirty with Betsy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, unsubtly flirty in the middle of all this. And then we cut to something I didn't expect to cut to. Rogue is in her own kind of dream state. And as she's trying to figure out where she is and how she can move through it, all of a sudden, in front, or near her, is that flaming wolf that was in Psylocke's dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I said Psylocke, but she doesn't use that name anymore.
Well, yeah. Knew who she was.
And it leads her to a sort of Stonehenge, except the stones of this henge are made out of sentinel heads. Which makes this whole place even creepier.
And there's an X,
a big X symbol etched into the ground,
X-Men
yeah.
Logo.
Yeah.
Which indicates a circle of power according to the way Apocalypse's grimoires are written in the information sections here.
Mm-hmm.
As well as an indication in this dream that Apocalypse is planning to do something, but it's not very clear as to whether or not his machinations are to help or to hurt. Just whomever is driving all this seems to think Apocalypse is at the center of it.
Mm-hmm.
Flashback to the real world, well, as real as it is anyway. In Apocalypse, Captain Britain and Jubilee are trying to defend the tower. They're trying to keep Rogue alive because Apocalypse thinks that the timing of whatever's going on here is critical, and something's happening too soon. Rogue is waking up too soon for him to crack this portal into Avalon. And unfortunately, Gambit and Richter arrive at this time, and they find out that Apocalypse has been up to something, although they still don't know what. And that last panel where Gambit charges up his hands and punches his fist into his hand, he's had it. That's it. He is not dealing with Apocalypse at this moment anymore.
Nope.
flashback to the dream state that Rogue's in, and she is being hurt within the dream, although not seriously. That strange ball of energy appears in her abdomen, and I thought this was a euphemism for childbirth. I thought she might be pregnant or something.
I thought so too, especially because the orb of light makes her look more rounded.
Yeah, but evidently it's a manifestation in her dream state of all the energy she's absorbed from the Avalon portal, and she uses a sword within the dream to stab herself and open it up, which forms into a throne, which makes everything even weirder here.
Mm-hmm.
But also weirder is that Rogue seems to finally recognize this fiery wolf that's been running through her dream and calls her Miss Prestige.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then gives her another name.
Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Which is notable for a couple reasons. I mean, Rachel Summers is one of the most powerful telepaths on the planet right now, Cyclops' daughter, and she's also one of the founding members of the first Excalibur.
Uh-huh.
But there's still no real explanation as to why Rachel's been doing all this time. And Apocalypse and Gambit, their throwdown is short. Gambit rushes Apocalypse, and Apocalypse puts one of those big overhanded blue fists and punches him into the ground. I'm almost glad he wasn't standing, because I think he would have been driven into the earth like a tent spike. And unfortunately, the crystal that Richter brought back, the energy in it was spent saving Gambit.
Actually, I think that they did explain why Rachel was in her dreams.
They eventually did, but not in this moment.
No, not in that particular moment, but it was kind of revealed in Gambit's fight with Apocalypse.
Yeah, that it comes up that Gambit, in all of his times back and forth to Krakoa, has asked one of the telepaths he knew to just nudge things.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, he asked all of them.
I think he just asked one in particular. I don't think you want too many cooks in that kitchen, especially since you don't know what's going on. But more or less, Apocalypse has had enough of the interference that Gambit is creating. And I think he's searching his body to see if he has any more crystals when he is swept off by a very, very upset Rogue in a newish outfit that... It's not her standard. It appears to be her Avalon-inspired outfit. One that she's supposed to get when she goes to Avalon. I like it more than her current one.
It is pretty awesome. It has like this leather moto jacket looking thing at the top, and then like a darker green onesie.
Yeah, it's basically her
suit.
It's basically her 90s outfit, except just about every part of it is some shade of green.
Yeah, and the jacket is way updated.
Yeah. I don't know why it's appearing here, but it's a great updated look for her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not entirely sure what's going on, but she's sure it has to do with Apocalypse, and she is in for the punching. Meanwhile, because the crystals needed to break through to Avalon require ancient mutant energy, Apocalypse is almost glad to see her because he wants Rogue to kill him, like right then and there. His bones may have the required energy needed to punch through that portal.
Well, you say she would go for the punch, but she dropped the gloves, so...
She did. I think she meant to put him down, as in sleep, but he wanted her to go the extra mile. And my guess is the only reason she went that extra mile is because she was probably getting more and more of his bizarre mercurial attitude as she was draining his abilities.
Or she was that pissed off at him.
Mm-hmm.
But she went for it, and Apocalypse's death was all they needed to break the portal open. And meanwhile, everyone's staring at Rogue, who doesn't understand why people are staring at her. She can't see the blue skin she has right now. And the last issue was almost as confounding as everything else. Because of Apocalypse's status on the Quiet Council, he's moved up the queue when it comes to resurrections, and in his case, it's pretty much immediate.
Yep.
And he has things he has to do right away, regardless of the fact that his body's not ready. Morgan Le Fay is getting ready to meet Excalibur, who has just come through the newly opened Krakoan portal, to finally deal with Morgan and try and free Betsy's brother, which is a little bit overdue at this moment. And to say Rogue is juiced up on Apocalypse is putting it lightly.
Yeah.
She's firing the energy blast, she has more strength than she usually has, and she is very much gung-ho at the moment. And I want to remind you that usually Rogue's baseline powers are just her energy-absorbing abilities. However, her strength and her invulnerability right now come from Wonder Man, who himself is scary powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Now add Apocalypse on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's all troublesome.
I wouldn't want her to be angry at me.
No.
Unfortunately, that's very easy to do.
I mean,
That is true.
I wonder about the rules, though, because the rules of Krakoa state that they're not allowed to kill a human, yet Richter's abilities, when he opened up that chasm underneath two soldiers and then closed it again? Where do Avalon people fall into that rule set?
You're not supposed to think about that. That's a plot thing.
Well, they're not on Earth. They're in some other dimension.
I just have to ask the question, man. I'm trying to keep track of all the angles here. I mean, especially since Betsy tells Richter that her brother's being held in the tower, and Richter, in a flash, has brought down that tower. He didn't wait, didn't cajole, he just brought it down.
Mm-hmm.
And just when things look like they're about to get worse is when Apocalypse, walking with a cane, has strode onto the battlefield, and he has offered to Morgan Le Fay a bargain. A champion versus champion duel to the death. Basically, he wants Morgan Le Fay's champion, obviously the chained-up Brian Braddock, versus his champion, Elizabeth Braddock, to the death. Winner gets the throne of Avalon. Which all sounds really odd.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this belies everything that they've been aiming for at this moment. And I don't know what it was at this moment that told Rogue that she could tell Betsy that she can trust Apocalypse's motives.
Yeah, when did that happen?
I don't know. But the duel happens, and it's over way quicker than I expected. It only took a couple pages before Betsy accidentally stabbed Brian with his own sword. Meanwhile, Apocalypse has Jubilee use Shogo's Dragonfire to keep the armies at bay, because evidently everything that's happened up to this point has repaired the walls between realities, and now Dragonfire is very much on the table.
Yeah, and I understand later why it's okay, but at the moment you're like, wait, why is it now suddenly fine?
Yeah. But some of that may have to do with the new monarch of Avalon. Apocalypse did not take the throne for himself. He took it for Jamie Braddock, the reality manipulator.
Mm-hmm. And if you read some of the things between issues, it was talking about the forces of Morgan Le Fay and Mad King Jamie.
Yep.
Aptly named.
Oh, yeah. And this is where Apocalypse's brilliance really came into play, because he knew that this would be to the death. He had a high degree of certainty that Betsy would win and Brian would die, because once Jamie's on the throne with his reality warping powers, he can just bring Brian back to life as easily as he puts his finger into a glass of water.
Yeah, he even did boop.
Yeah. Even made himself that gaudy gold crown.
And gave them jester hats.
Yeah,
on this guy is crazy.
But yeah, Jamie on the throne of Avalon is trouble for everybody. I don't care how you slice it or who's there. But in the epilogue, we found out several things. One, Rogue is kind of afraid because she thought, because of the edict to have more mutant children, that she would be compelled by others to have a baby, and she doesn't know how her powers would affect a baby. Which is a very fair question.
It is.
Thankfully, though, her powers seem to be fully under control because of her recent taking of Apocalypse's powers and everything. It appears that Apocalypse's molecular control abilities have shifted her body chemistry to a very balanced point. She no longer needs to protect herself from the world. She can take powers and energy at will. You were saying, Jesse?
I was gonna say, I'm trying to remember what caused her powers to go back to that rather random state.
It was because she fully absorbed Wonder Man during her stint with the Uncanny Avengers. And they were stuck together for a while, but unfortunately, once they finally expelled Wonder Man, the ionic energy threw her chemistry way out of whack and her powers were out of control again.
Oh, okay.
You know, as a matter of fact, things have been worse as a result of the Mr. and Mrs. X series. I think it was about 12 issues. her powers were turned up. She no longer needed to touch people to steal their energy. She had an area of effect.
Oh, it's similar to Mimic?
Yeah, except she was draining energy from everybody to the point of near killing them almost instantly.
Oh, that's dangerous.
It required active concentration to
Yikes.
keep her from accidentally murdering people. She was put through multiple realities by Mojo, if I remember correctly at this point, and they kept having to rebirth Gambit because every time she remembered she had powers, all of a sudden they would kick in and he would die within seconds.
Let me tell you, that's somebody who needs social distancing.
Meanwhile, Brian Braddock has not taken back the amulet of valor from Betsy because he had a dream where the original rulers of Avalon, Merlin and his daughter Roma, came to him and offered him the same choice he had back in the 1980s, the amulet or the sword. But because of how inadequate Morgan Le Fay made him feel as a champion, somehow he chose the sword. So he's not Captain Britain anymore. He is a Lionheart. He is a symbol of basically anger and rage of Britain.
Mm-hmm.
Complete with a different set of armor. Very similar to Britain's, but it's red with the yellow sigil of, I guess you could say, the British monarchy. The lion.
Yeah, the gold rampant lion on our red background.
And he wants Betsy to take the sword and bury it. He doesn't want to be tempted to use it. At the same time, he refuses to take back the amulet from Betsy when she offers it because he doesn't feel worthy of it anymore. He is a man in turmoil. But the scariest part of the epilogue has to be what's happening in Avalon. King Jamie the Mad is bored, but he thinks he can see the forces of the White Witch approaching the castle again. And he goes to see Apocalypse about what he could do about this. And Apocalypse doesn't want to be disturbed while he's working. He respects Jamie's monarchy, but he needs privacy while he works. And at this moment, he has Morgan Le Fay knocked out on a table with some kind of hoses hooked up to an open area of her abdomen as he's trying to pull something out of her. It looks like he's using her to charge up more of those power crystals he needs for multiversal travel. None of this is cool.
No.
And I still can't decide if Apocalypse has some other long game here or if he's just taking advantage of a resource that just happened to be open to him. Could be both. And I gotta say, the art in this by Marcus Toe is gorgeous. These characters look amazing and they're not overly complicated. It's very simple to understand what's going on from page to page. And his composition is really good. There was something really cinematic in the presentation of the characters throughout these issues. I actually felt the scale and scope of what was going on. What do you guys think of this volume?
I liked it.
Again, high fantasy, not my thing, but this was enjoyable and actually fast read.
Mm-hmm.
I was intrigued by it all. And I will say, no, I think this is really good stuff. I think this is imaginative writing of a bunch of characters who could easily fall into superhero stereotypes, but Teenie Howard's script is pushing them in new directions, and they're all going to have to find their ways. You know, Richter's got to figure out what it means to be a druid in a world full of superheroes. Gambit is going to have to cede at some point that he may not be the end-all be-all in Rogue's life. Meanwhile, Rogue has to understand her own place in Krakoa and everything else. Jubilee, she's going to have to accept that sooner or later her son is going to be not just a dragon, but in danger. And Betsy has a lot to learn about herself in her new role as Captain Britain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As well as the five of them together, possibly six if you include Apocalypse, have to understand Avalon well enough to rule it well. It's going to be a challenge. So I think there's a lot that can be gained from here. I would gladly buy this in volume form and put it on my shelf, though. I've bought the issues, but I need something I can flip through, because I really enjoy visuals, and visually the double set of costumes for most of these characters and the different landscapes they find themselves in just intrigue me.
Definitely. I'd buy the volume too.
Meanwhile, while comic books may not be shipped past this Wednesday, I have an idea as a follow-up that I don't think I'm going to get a lot of argument from you guys.
Try me.
We had a lot of fun of it last week, and I know there's only 12 issues of it. We read 6. Why don't we read the other 6 of the Wonder Twins?
Okay.
Find out how it finishes. Find out if DC finished as strong as they started, because that was funny.
That was surprisingly funny, and I was pleasantly surprised. Like I didn't know what it was going to be like, because of course everyone who does remember the Wonder Twins from the Super Friends?
The Super Friends.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
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 Super corny, super cheesy. I was like, oh boy. Here we
gosh,
go.
yeah.
But
All right.
it was very good.
Yeah. All right. Well, next week we'll do the second and final volume of the Wonder Twins from DC Comics. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you and yours stay safe, and have faith. We will get through this. We just require time, and we require listening to the right parties. So please listen to your disease experts. Thank you very much. Have a great one. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
The Cosmic Library is now closed.
This podcast is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.